Hello, everyone. Welcome to, and thanks to the BOS team for us to be here. I just want to start with a bit of intro. I'm Cheyenne. One of the reasons I'm here is one year of my PhD was focused on Oracle research and security, so I did some papers on that. Would be happy to discuss. And currently, I'm co-founder of the CREED, a security auditing DAO. And I would like everyone to introduce themselves here. Tessa, you want to start?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tessa. I'm the market research lead at Flashbots. Flashbots is the OG of MEV, and we're rolling out a couple of new products, Rollup Boost and whatever TE builders can show that later. Thanks.
Thank you, Ugur.
Hi, I'm Ugur, working at API3, doing strategy and mostly talks around the world. We do oracles like everyone else here, with a focus on OEV in the last 1.5 years.
And are you?
I'm Araya. I'm a co-founder of Gyroscope. We're a consumer of oracles. And I also have a background. I did a PhD, did a lot of some of the early DeFi research, including also looking into oracles.
I'm Matt. I work at UMA. We have two products you may have heard of. One is Oval, which is OEV related, and the other one is the UMA Oracle, which is sort of an optimistic oracle that's behind things like Polymarket and other sort of prediction market type protocols.
All right, we have a great set of speakers from data consumers to actually running the networks. First and foremost, I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. And could you all maybe spend a few minutes on explaining what is the concept of Oracle extractable value and how does that fit in the broader narrative of MEV?
So I would define Oracle extractable value as MEV that is derived from an Oracle update. So anytime an Oracle publishes, I think, a price update, you can have actors that would want to backrun it, maybe even sandwich it, possibly even front run it, depending on what they're trying to do. And that would be, I guess, the basic definition of OEV.
Thank you. Do you have?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would even expand on that a tiny bit, because obviously blockchains are not real world. Even if we publish an update of a price right now, it is already delayed even by a small millisecond. So I would go even a bit further and say essentially OEV is whenever an oracle updates or doesn't update, even not updating, and the value that you can extract from a perps market is OEV basically. And yeah, the value there is what I would define it.
I would add a little bit more flavor there. I think there's kind of two main types of OEV. And one of them is what's being described so far, which is kind of honest OEV. Let's assume the oracle's providing the right information, and then you can, derive benefit by sequencing transactions in the optimal way from that information changing on chain. But there's also kind of perverse OEV, which is where we might recognize that the oracle provider has a lot of power when it comes to deciding exactly which information to provide. And they can choose that information in a way that derives some extra value.
Yeah, and I think we've covered it pretty well, but one case I think that's really interesting that we've seen at UMA is even for prediction markets, right? They're supposed to take into account real-time information. So something like Polymarket on the election, right? They should be pricing this stuff in. But sometimes a prediction market can specify rules that are unclear, and so you actually don't know how the oracle is going to resolve beforehand. So most of the time you assume that you know what the oracle is going to say before it says it, but in prediction markets you could even have OEV based on how you think the oracle is going to interpret the rules, and how that ends up resolving on chain actually changes the price, and so you could exploit that if you, for instance, are part of the resolution process for that oracle. So on the UMA side, we have a voting process, right? You could technically front run votes, or if you were a voter in the system, you could technically see what that vote's going to be ahead of time and actually exploit that OEV for profit, which is a really interesting sort of case that I think people miss about oracles. They power more than just price feeds; they power prediction markets too.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to actually continue on the Oval project you mentioned. I know it was announced around 9 months ago. So personally, I don't know that much about the Oval project, so I would like to. How does it even address these challenges, and what does it do for OEV?
Yeah, so Oval's interesting because we took a slightly different approach with it than I think like API 3, for instance, where like API 3, like I think it's an interesting model where they bundle basically the OAV capture solution with the Oracle itself. So you use the API 3 Oracle and you sort of get this OAV capture solution on top of it. One, we've built an Oracle, so we know the struggle of trying to convince people to use your Oracle. That's a really hard thing to go to Aave and convince them to use your Oracle. So our sort of position on this was like, is there a way we could do OAV capture on top of any existing Oracle? And so the Oval product, basically, you can think of it as just sitting between the Oracle, like a Chainlink, and like Aave, right? And it sort of provides this modular OAV capture solution right in the middle. And so you sort of you keep all of the assumptions around your Oracle, you keep all the safety around your Oracle. If you're going to get the right prices as long as Chainlink is operating correctly. Oval cannot change your price, it can't break your price. But we're able to sort of capture OAV as a part of the process. Yeah, and I think like this modular design allows us to go and integrate with people who might, have a very deep relationship with their Oracle and not want to change. Yeah, I can go deeper on how it actually works if that's of interest.
Yeah, I think we have time, but also I want to like get Tessa involved in this conversation because I feel like it's a MEV, it's a Flashbots and UMA collaboration. Am I right about that? Or?
Yeah, that's correct. I believe like Oval or UMA wraps a smart contract, right? The price update goes into a smart contract, which is then passed down to MEV share, which is Flashbot's OFA. It's an order flow auction. So once it's in the order flow auction, searchers can see it and they bid for the right. They can't front run it. They can only back run it. And their bidding profits are then passed back to the originator of the bundle, which would be Oval in this situation.
This is interesting because the topic here is also unlocking new revenue models for a lot of oracles. So what were the like technical challenges involved in this collaboration? To like how did it start, and were there something like obvious that you had to like?
I'm going to pass that to you, being the non-technical person.
I mean, the challenge was like at first, what you basically want to do is you want to prove that like an auction has actually happened. And like you can't, Flashbots doesn't sign things. They don't sign the results of auctions, so you can't really tell that. So we went through sort of a long sort of technical design process, and obviously Flashbots knows auctions better than anybody, so we really wanted to work with them and build on top of their infrastructure because we didn't think that we could build an auction infrastructure quite as well as Flashbots could. And so how we ended up doing this is we basically had a privileged actor unlock the price. So you only have like, if that privileged actor doesn't show up, your price still comes through after a few blocks, but if that privileged actor shows up, they can unlock the price ahead of time. And so that transaction of unlocking the price is what is auctioned off in the sort of Flashbots background system. So we're basically saying, we're going to put up this transaction, and then these searchers will go to Flashbots and bid to backrun that unlocked transaction. And then that revenue that comes out of that is specified by Oval to like go to the protocol, or it's usually split between the protocol and their users, and some goes back to the Oracle as well. So this is sort of the way that we built on top of them without having to have Flashbots prove to the chain that they actually ran an auction on the price.
I think our next step in version 2 will probably be running this auction within a TE environment, so you can actually have the attestation that there was a blind auction and it wasn't tampered with and nobody had access to it.
Yeah, TEs are like the sexy thing these days that like.
Yes, they are.
I want to change the gear here and talk about API 3. I know API 3 is aiming to recapture the value through OAV network. You have that. Like maybe just a short on what OAV network is and how does that really improve any efficiency of the Oracle updates?
Yeah, sure. Before I get started, I also want to say I have a talk about OAV right after, and I even talk about all of these solutions in detail. So if you have any questions, just stay longer. So when we first thought about how to recapture OAV, one of the first things that we came up with, also what Yuma came up with, let's just wrap what people are already using and just auction it off. The main reason we decided against it, and which was kind of validated for us basically a week later when you released yours, is you're trusting in the goodwill of the underlying Oracle. Like the underlying Oracle, may that be Chronicle, that you wrap, or Chainlink, or others, they have to play along, and all of them have upgradable multisigs, and all of them can blacklist you, and you're basically building, let's put it this way, we have a they do all of the work, and you pause that work and sell the rights. And that is actually what's making money. A lot of times, Oracle projects make zero money, so now you build the actual money maker on top, and you're not involving the underlying Oracle. So what happens is that they come out and, yeah, tell people to not use you, blacklist you, or potentially other things. And we, when we first started designing this, had a prototype ready for that, and we're like, there is no way in hell Chainlink will allow us to simply do this and make all of the money, which is why we changed gears and essentially said, well, we could stop the update and auction it off, but how can we effectively do another auction model? And then we came up with OEV Network. So our regular oracles are delayed by 30 seconds. They push prices on-chain with an inbuilt delay, but the same oracles sell real-time data on an L2 through auctions. Which means that you can effectively, by paying, use a fast lane and front run the regular Oracle updates and gain the advantage that way. The underlying thing is that you obviously need to utilize API 3 oracles because we have to somehow create this priority. Oval creates it by essentially artificially blocking an update. We create it by artificially delaying the underlying oracles. And that is the core premise. Like somehow you need to create priority that you can sell. And with OEV Network, what we did, you can imagine it as a delayed push oracle underneath with a real-time auction-gated pull oracle on top. So you can get as many updates as you want, as often as you want within a minute. So you kind of partake in an auction similar to Arbitrum's time boost. You win the rights to a pull oracle for a minute, and then if in that minute the price goes down 30%, you can, if you want to, publish a price every single second and take advantage of all of the OEV that happens there, and the protocol gets paid for that priority access in the process.
Yeah, that was great. So just zooming out on that, like what are the key benefits for protocols and the users? I know protocols, you said like more security and they can pay for faster updates, but as a user, would they see any different UX or is that the same?
It kind of depends on two factors. First of all, what does the protocol do with the OEV that they get? They could theoretically, if somebody gets liquidated, give the auction proceeds back to the person that was liquidated, which would drop liquidation fees from 5 to 25% to practically nothing. The other benefit is granularity. Like a lot of these auction systems, for instance, Oval, you're still relying on a Chainlink update coming in. And on mainnet, all of these oracles operate due to the cost on way higher deviations, which means there are less updates. This way, you're not beholden to any of the granularity restrictions that the underlying oracle does. You can publish, if it's profitable, you can publish a price every single block if it's beneficial for you. So users, essentially, of our oracles, if there are opportunities, you get way more increased granularity because a searcher will pay for the price, and you also outsource, essentially, the cost of the oracle update on the chain itself.
All right, thank you. Now we want to talk to Arya about like Gyroscope especially like operates in a space that like heavily relies on Oracle data, and how does OAV impacts this protocol, stablecoins, the risks around it?
So the two different types of OEV that I was saying before, I think characterizes like how we look at it. So the sort of like honest OEV is actually like good for protocols in some sense. Like it is what actually enforces the properties that you built into your protocol. Like this, the example of like liquidation, for instance. Like you want that to happen because it like makes keeps your protocol safe. You do want to like minimize the OEV to the extent that you can still get the kind of like safety guarantees, but like OEV kind of helps you enforce actually what you wanted in the protocol. But what we're worried about is kind of this like perverse OEV, where we may not be kind of getting the actual like safety protocol, safety about the protocol, and we may actually be getting kind of exploited by taking in bad data actually, this isn't like a new problem necessarily. Like this happens even in like traditional finance. A really good example is like the LIBOR manipulations. You have like very high reputation entities. So this is like Barclays, JP Morgan, all of the big banks, basically collaborating together to kind of fix what interest rate data looks like, and then deriving like actual literal profit on like at the contract level on those manipulations over the course of like 10 years. And what we are hoping for in the blockchain setup is that we're kind of making something that kind of helps to fix these problems. And so we just want to be aware that we're trying not to add on top of it. What we in particular do at Gyroscope is, I mean, we take the perspective of the user of this data, the protocol itself, and we try to build as robust of infrastructure about how we ingest that price data as possible, with as many kind of extra safety checks and kind of ways to validate. Does the protocol actually think that the data it's ingesting is correct? Does it kind of match what else is happening across the ecosystem, what's happening both on-chain and other off-chain sort of information, as just kind of an extra sense check. And that's kind of what we think the best that you can do at the protocol level.
So is that correct to say you use your own aggregation models, aggregation method to aggregate different sources?
Yeah, effectively, we optimistically use the Oracle prices themselves that come in, but we validate it against other information sources that aren't coming from the same Oracle, and also come from DEX markets in particular, for instance, in a way that's kind of just a bit more difficult to manipulate if you're the Oracle, and has kind of provable costs on chain about what it would cost to actually manipulate.
All right, great. So we were talking about OEV, the opportunities around OEV, and also you mentioned some of the risks. And I feel like one of the risks is around value distribution, similar to what we've seen with MEV and how MEV blocker tried to get back to the user. I want to get everyone's opinion on what do you think the best, most equitable way to distribute OAV among stakeholders are, around oracles, Dapps, end users, without any conflict of interest?
So Flashbot's MEV share and even Flashbots Protect are the only products that actually give back everything to the order flow originator. So if you submit a bundle, like Oval submits the bundle, they get to decide how it's split, whether it goes back to their protocols, their oracles, or their users. MEV blockers, they extract a little portion. Merkle's the same. We're almost a public goods in that sense, where we would, even on Unichain, we would want the MEV, whether it's in OEV form or actual MEV form, to go back to the protocol and the order flow originator.
Do you have any opinions on what's the best way to distribute that?
That's up to the project and the protocol. I mean, if it's an end user, we would like to see it go back to the end user, right? But it's up to the protocol.
I want to hear everyone's opinion. So.
For us specifically, like I mentioned before, the core problem with the Oracle industry when you look at price feeds is that nobody makes money providing them. So we built an OEV solution on top because we actually try to make money. And since we try to do that, we currently have an 80-20 split, where we essentially take a 20% cut of whatever we can get back to the protocol. What the protocol then does with it, I have a particular opinion on that. I personally believe it should go to the user, because there's no reason to charge someone a 10% liquidation fee if there is no actual cost. If you recoup 80% of that, why not give that back? And I had heated debates about this with the people from Euler, for instance, who argue that if somebody puts the lending protocol into a position where they could incur bad debt because you get liquidated, they need to be punished, which I don't fully agree with. But I'm going to say what Tess said. We just give you back 80%. What you do with that is completely up to you.
All right, I think that the protocol would be Gyroscope. I can have other opinions.
Yeah, what I'm mainly worried about, I guess, is kind of the perverse incentives that could come up from where the revenue kind of goes back to. And I definitely recognize that Oracle business models are difficult, and it's hard to find something that works very well. But at the same time, if you're making a lot of money from Oracle extractable value, you kind of have the perverse incentive to create more of it, even when it shouldn't be created. And so that's what I would be kind of mainly worried about here. I don't really have a solution, and probably this is going to happen no matter what. It's probably better that it happens in a transparent way, at least. But either way, we should kind of be willing to scrutinize this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not going to say anything new from what everyone else said, but basically, I think we often think of OEV as mostly in the context of liquidations and lending markets. But I actually think that this is like MEV and OEV are really widespread, and so I think that it's hard to prescribe a very particular way of distributing this value. I think it's always going to be application specific, and like we believe in open markets, right? Lending markets will compete, and if one lending market decides to give the money back to their users and that doesn't create perverse incentives, then that lending market will win, right? And so I think as like Oracle providers, it's really like, as everyone said, we should be just offering the options, giving people full optionality to build the protocols the way they want to build them, and then whichever protocols distribute the value the best are ultimately going to win because they provide the best experience for their users, and that's what we all want. So yeah, I just think we just sort of lean into the market and let the market decide.
So imagine this future that everyone's using OAV rather than just any oracles directly. What security risk do you think is going to emerge, and particularly around like auction integrity or price manipulation, any other security issues that you might foresee or already have seen?
You're starting with me?
It's a question for anyone that wants to take it.
I think you always have the trust assumptions with auctions that, number one, the auctioneer is going to obey by the rules and not just, take the result and then put their order in at the very end. And then past that process, does that bundle get submitted properly to the builder? And is that builder going to actually obey that and, not unwrap it and like insert their own orders? So there's, I think, various aspects throughout this process, even just in MEV space in general, that you have these trust assumptions with. And one of the ways, we'll go back to TEs on this, but is we're trying to do that with, by putting our builder in a TE, and then eventually you will be able to attest everything through that TE that, okay, this bundle was submitted correctly, yeah, it was executed by the builder correctly. We know that it wasn't exploited or unwrapped or there was any shenanigans that happened to it.
I mean, for us, it's also effectively going in the same direction that Tess mentioned. All of these systems create various points of heavy centralization. You have, in our case, similar an auctioneer, and we specifically put it on L2 as everybody can effectively see all of the bids coming in, who the auctioneer awards to, what happens. So like, it is centralized, we acknowledge it's completely centralized, but you can see what we do. And you can essentially say they're cheating the system, which will effectively undermine the whole credibility of it. So we thought the one thing that is non-negotiable is that if we introduce that piece of centralization, even if the underlying oracles that it relies on is decentralized, people need to be able to say, hey, this is a fair auction. Like, it's not us inserting our own orders at the last second and taking all of the OEV for ourselves, for instance.
Go ahead if you have.
Yeah, I can just add that in Oval, one of the things that we saw quite a bit in building it out and testing it is how congestion, on-chain congestion, and also even congestion at the auction level can warp the incentives or even warp the results of auctions. If you just look at Flashbots, right? I think the product Flashbots has built is incredible, but one problem you see is that revert protection comes at a cost, and that cost is that builders don't have a great protection against spam and heavy order flow during times of where there's lots of stuff trying to get on chain at the same time. The builders literally do not have enough time to look at every single request they have coming in and figure out which one to include in the auction and how to sort them. And so this is exactly when you need oracles to work well and these auctions to work well. This is exactly when all the OAV is going to get generated, when you have all this congestion. And so I think a big question in my mind is how do you make sure these auctions work really, really well under stress when there's tons of order flow trying to get through or there's tons of liquidation pressure? Because I think all of this infrastructure works pretty well when you have a liquidation here or there, but mostly there's not a lot of volatility. But when ETH, tanks by, 50% in a day, right, are these systems going to hold up? And I don't know, we'll see.
Would you like to add, Arya, something, or we can go?
Oh, we can keep going.
Okay. So you mentioned infrastructure, which is interesting because even with the growth of MEV, we noticed that the infrastructure was changed, how Ethereum works and how we send the transactions. Do you also envision anything with OAV changing that there a policy or infrastructure that changes, like brings more actors to the, let's say, Ethereum infrastructure, like L1s?
Sorry, just the question is like whether, actually, can you repeat the question?
Do you see envision any changes in the infrastructure because of the creation of OAV?
I mean, I definitely think, like, just going back to the congestion problem, I think that we're going to see lots and lots of L2s trying to deal with the problem of like revert protection and spam in different ways. Like you already see this with like Unichain, right? They're worrying a lot about how do you like build in like MEV protection or better systems for auctioning off block space into the actual L2. And so I think like maybe OEV specifically won't impact it, but I definitely think like the MEV in general is on a lot of people's mind. The people who are like designing sequencers, it's on a lot of people's minds. And I'm hopeful that like once there's like, if there's big innovation there, we get to see that stuff, you know, proliferate through L2s and then eventually maybe even proliferate back to the L1. Be cool.
Do you guys want to add?
Yeah, I think maybe infrastructure affecting like oracles is another way to think of it, like execution tickets or pre-confs. They're not highly, you know, those are all highly debatable whether or not they're going to get implemented in itself. But those are things that could affect oracles, whether or not you're going to use an execution ticket for your oracle update or an inclusion pre-conf, maybe something along those lines. Then you have technology upgrades, right? You have ZK-TLS that exists, Chainlink's Deco. Now you're bringing Web 2 data onto blockchain space with a proof, so that could be something else in itself. TEs, so I think there's a lot of things that could affect oracles and make it better, but they're all very early stages.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just wanted to also add, like, I personally think the OEV thing, it's gonna, specifically when we look at DeFi protocols, it's basically gonna shift where the auction effectively takes place. Oval is not gonna be restricted to Ethereum only. Last time I talked to you guys, I'm pretty sure you're going multi-chain. So effectively, on L2, specifically on liquidations, you currently just see spam wars. Like people anticipate when an oracle will update and they just heavily spam and try to get their liquidation call in before anyone else. That will be completely gone. Like that entire spam will just move somewhere else to an auction system and one person is gonna win the right to liquidate, and effectively this system, similar to how block space auctions kind of drove down cost to transact on Ethereum, on all of these L2s, specifically during peak volatility, like we already said, it's going to reduce costs massively. Like congestion will go down massively just because you don't have 20 searchers all spamming on every single Arbitrum block every 250 milliseconds to liquidate. And this is literally going on when we looked at it. It's completely crazy. And it's going to be better for the L2s. How much volume that's going to be, we're going to see at the end, but it's at least going to be volume where it matters during peak volatility.
Sorry, can I ask one question? Just to follow up on that, like how long do y'all think the auction windows should be for this sort of stuff? Because like L2s, the block times on L2s are really, really short. I'm actually curious to see, like, especially from the Flashbot's perspective, right? Like how, like, do y'all think that like doing a full auction for like block space in 250 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds is reasonable, or do you think we have to lengthen these windows?
I think if you look at what's happening in TradFi, 250 milliseconds is probably something quite doable. You're going to run into problems with latency. It's going to be probably more centralized due to the fact that it's such a small window, and probably something where you're looking at co-location, like where, you know, it's going to be like geographically very centralized. So then you have those issues, which might be a little bit different, and maybe people don't care about that if the costs are low and it helps I guess, the congestion.
Yeah. Just to also answer on that, I don't think you're going to see models that auction off every single 250 millisecond block. I think you're going to see more of what Arbitrum is doing, where they auction off a 1 minute slot that gives you an advantage of a certain millisecond amount over a time period, and that's what we also went with. Like you kind of, at least that's what I had the discussions with the Arbitrum guys, you kind of have these people that already anticipate that a certain window is very profitable, and they're going to be bidding because they expect volatility in that sense.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of inefficiency there, right? Like, admittedly, right? Because you're having to buy it before you know how you're going to use it.
Yeah, obviously.
The example of Chatfire was interesting because like even the book Flash Boys, which a lot of like the Flashbots paper came out after that, was talking about how everyone was chasing faster transaction, and then they realized because they hit different brokers, they actually need to slow down so they hit all the brokers exactly at the same time rather than in order, which probably we're going to see more on the infrastructure change and everything around that. I have one more question, and we can open it to the audience if they have any questions. So I think we touched on this topic, but like, what future trends do you see for OEV role in Oracle designs, and just future trends in OEV? I know you mentioned TEE and some others, but anything that feel free to go sci-fi also.
Well, I think you're going to probably see more, I think, blind auctions happening in secure environments. So Oracle update's going to happen either in TE or it's a structure like API 3 where, it's auctioned off. I think that's going to happen. And it's going to be passed, hopefully, back to the users. But at least you'll know that this auction process is trustworthy, right? And then I think that's something that's really important.
I think that any Oracle that in one way or another provides price feeds or like will need to do OEV. Like there's no money in providing price feeds. I think I said this 5 times already, but like you need to do something to make money, and this is a service that people need to build on top of their Oracles just to have it, because otherwise users are eventually going to move to people that give them essentially similar to credit cards with cashback. If you don't have it, why should I use you?
Yeah, the trend toward like protocol recapture of like MEV and OEV, I think like will continue. It's especially for like very like popular apps, like why they should give away kind of the value is kind of a big question, and whether they can capture it to themselves by just like changing the mechanism design a bit. I think we'll see a lot more of that.
Yeah, and just to maybe take it in a slightly different direction, for Oracles more broadly, like I'm really hoping that we start to see more insurance in the Oracle market. And so you have the rise of things like EigenLayer, which really is just an insurance protocol. I would love to see people think about how to take like these new insurance models and combine them with Oracles to give protocols a better sense of safety when they're using Oracles. Because like the scary OEV you were talking about earlier, right? You can sort of get rid of some of that if you know that there's a big pool of money sitting there that's going to pay you out if you have a bad price update. So I would be really excited to see more insurance or more thinking around how we can embed insurance into Oracles.
That's actually interesting because like we were talking about like price feeds, but like Oracles as a source of truth or data, let's say for weather data, that could be also used for real world insurance policies. Like, do you see, if it's hard to make money with an Oracle that is using price feed, how hard is it to make money as an Oracle that provides like weather data or some other non-price feeds?
I mean, price feeds is currently, except for prediction markets, 95% of the business. So like even less money than zero, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, the prediction market case is really interesting. I'm really, obviously we have a vested interest in it, but I'm really curious to see how it goes, see where it goes. I think there is a lot, I think there's a lot of space to extract revenue for Oracle models in prediction market space, because a lot of prediction markets sort of control the order book, and so you can sort of add fees to that order book and generate a lot of revenue that could be split with a potential Oracle. So I think models like that are going to be really interesting from like the weather data or sort of long tail market perspective. I do agree price feeds are tough. Price feeds, like there's definitely a race to zero on price feeds, which is hard.
So I would like to open back to the crowd. Like, do you have any questions from any of the speakers? There's one question there.
Hey, yeah, I'm just, I think both API 3's OEV solution and Ovo evolve a artificial delay in price feed update, right? And to me, I don't know, it sounds like, it can be used as, in some scenarios, a censorship as a service kind of thing, right? If there's a certain player will benefit from just a delayed price update, probably he has a huge short position of some asset and he just want that big liquidable position to just dump on the market all at once, right? So I'm just curious, in your modeling, does the benefit brought by the delay actually justifies the potential sort of, risk, it, brings?
I think in both our models, like if the opportunity is big enough, there is practically no delay. People always start with the delay because they're like, oh my God, it's delayed. But if you look at it, like our auction, like people liquidate within 2 to 3 seconds with us, and it's basically in the same block for oval almost every time it happens. What I do get on the attack vector though is like we have on our L2 to partake in the auctions we have collateral requirements, and if you win an auction and don't execute on that, we're gonna slash you, we're gonna slash you, we're gonna slash you, and in the future the plan is that is also going to be a reputation mechanism. So while you farm rep, we're slowly also going to increase the collateral requirements. So basically, at one point, the players that act honestly continuously will have almost no requirements, versus those that come in and continuously behave badly will be bumped up to almost their bid amounts effectively every time.
And just to add, like on the oval side, the solution to that problem is that like we go through flashbots, and the cool thing about flashbots is the person who's building the block is the same person that is auctioning off the order. So there is no possibility for you to bid in the auction and then not actually execute your order, right? Flashbot, like the builder is just going to throw your order out if they can't get payment from you. So literally, there is no way to submit a like unexecutable order in the auction, which is cool.
Any other questions from the speakers? Do you guys have anything that you want to add?
Well, Flashbot's team is happy to work with the oracles about implementing TE solutions to protect your data if you want to update it in a private manner, and possibly integrating into a solution similar to Oval. I think we can expand on the features that have actually for that first round of Oval and make it even better with our TE, our builder. So yeah, that's something we're happy to work with oracles on.
Stay after. I'm diving into Oval, OEV network, and PIF's Express Relay. Thank you.
Yeah, shill your talk project.
Just a talk.
I guess one, if you're interested in building a prediction market, come talk to me. And two, if you're interested in using Oval, or you have some sort of system that uses oracles and you want to extract revenue from it, and you use Chainlink or Pith or Chronicle or something, come talk to me about that too.
And I guess along those lines, if you're working on a protocol and want to protect against perverse OAV, you should come talk to me.
And I guess if you're interested in breaking OAV or breaking oracles, come talk to me. I think we have 5 more minutes, but we can also close the panel if we're all done. Well, thank you for everyone. Thank you everyone being here. Thank you.